There are two ways to go about matching standards and goals and objectives. What's referred to as the intentional approach to lesson planning is to find a standard and build a lesson around it. You can also use the naturalistic approach where you start with your goal and objective and then find a standard to match that. Either way, when we look at standards, whether it's a state standard, Common Core standard, or early learning standard, they all have key areas we want to look at to help us identify what specific skill the standard covers. So this particular example on the screen is from the Kansas Early Learning Standards. And as you can see from the farthest purple arrow on the left, this is pointing to the standard section title that lets us know what section or what category of standards we're currently looking at. So if you see the part here in green, this piece of our standard is the Communications and Literacy Standards. And if you notice over at the end it has parentheses CL, and that's important to point out. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So underneath your overall standard section title, you're going to have different domains. In Kansas, they align their domains by different age ranges. So they start with young infants, then go to mobile infants, toddlers. This one is 3-year-olds, and the last column is pre-4 or 4-year-old preschool. So once you're within your domain, you can look down and identify your specific standard. Each standard has a standard number, and this is where that CL comes into play. If you look at the beginning of the standard that's highlighted in red, it says CL. That's your code to know that this standard is connected to communication and literacy. When you move over next to it, then you have literature, that's an L. Literature, which matches right here. So it lets us know that we're looking at communications and literacy standards, in particular the literature section. Then there's a T. It's very small, I know, but it's right here as well. The T aligns to the domain, toddler. It lets us know that we're in the toddler domain. And then the number 1, right there, lets us know it's the first piece of the standard for toddlers. So you'll notice this one is number 2. The piece that's highlighted in yellow is what we refer to as our performance indicator. Some states refer to it as their standard statement, but this is where you find your sentence that tells you exactly what skill kids are going to be working on. So in this particular example, it's with prompting and support, asks and answers simple questions about story content using pictures. So that's how we read the standards. They might be set up a little differently, but they all have these elements. They all have the standard section title. They all have domains. They all have a standard number, which is like the code for which standard section and domain you're talking about. And then they all have the sentence, which again is called a performance indicator or a standard statement. So when we're looking at standards and putting them in our lesson, it's really important to make sure that our standard connects directly to our goal and objective, and that when we write our standard in the lesson plan, we include the standard section, domain, standard number, and performance indicator. So you want to include the whole thing. So let's have one more example. This standard is a Common Core standard, and I found it here on a Common Core. It is right here. And here is the indicator up here. So I scrolled up and I found that whole thing right there. I pasted it onto this document so we could have it in one location. So we see Common Core State Standards. ELA is English Language Arts. Literacy, it's the literacy arts. Kindergarten, and then 9 is, it was the 9th standard. Here's all the kindergarten standards. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was the 9th standard in this list. So make sure that you're putting all the standard indicators in there to show exactly what you are referencing.